owed something. And also, as we will dive into in approximately 15 minutes, Oregon did this to themselves a little bit in terms of the expectation monster. You know, it was very annoying at times and kind of, eye roll ability at times when Oregon was in its heyday with Chip Kelly 12 years ago. And Chip Kelly would be like, we don't care about the ratings. We don't care where we're ranked. We don't even know where we're ranked. All we care about is this one. It's one day at a time. It is one. And it's like, oh, my goodness gracious. You're number 3 in the country. But I'll tell you what. Those expectation monsters, they were kept. They were always there, but they were kept at an arm's length. I know that in a new social media world where recruiting is everything and NIL is everything, and you've got to not only recruit your players, but you got to re-recruit your own roster. I understand that marketing is part of feeding that beast, but there's a dark side to the force. Did I say that right, Brenden? Got it. There's a dark side to the force, and there's a dark side to all this marketing, Colorado.
You're right. It's coming into Research Stadium on Saturday.
Well, we're going to dive into that all week long, by the way. But, there's that little dark side, which is, you put out 4 30-minute long Hard Knocks style videos hyping everything up for the season. You charge tickets because it is supposed to be a big-time season at a price point that would reflect that. Sometimes you bring a little bit on yourself. I feel like I'm going to go into the Tony Romo voice a lot today. I don't know what's going on with this team, Jim. But that's going to be coming up in 15 minutes. Let's start with good news, all right? Let's start with good news. First off, football is back in our lives. Full force over the weekend.
At the end of the day, our two teams did win.
That's what I'm saying.
Undefeated Civil War, first time in...
And by the way, even better, 21-2. Brenden, 21-2. Does that mean anything to you? Because I didn't realize it, but I would like to thank our good friend, Josh Pate, from now the Josh Pate College Football Show. 21-2 through 2 weeks is the record of former Pac-12 teams. The Pac-12 may be dead, but Oregon State's 2-0, blanking San Diego State. Washington State just beat Texas Tech, by the way. In
the sense of the Pac-12, Just, I don't mean to be rude, but do we really care about outside of Oregon State and Washington State? Not really. I don't mean to be...
You don't really care, but here's my point is, again, this thing didn't have to die.
Oh, it didn't.
This is my point.
Thanks, Dion.
21-2 are former Pac-12 schools in the first 2 weeks. And while Oregon didn't look all that great against Idaho and Boise State, they're still 2-0. Oregon State is 2-0 with a win on the road against San Diego State. Washington State is 2-0 with a win against Texas Tech. And by the way, Jake Dickert is an interesting fella. I always go back to last year.
Is that a nice way to say he's a little weird?
Well, I respect his gumption. I don't know if it's always timed properly, but he spent last year essentially challenging the world. Tell me I'm not the coach of a Power 5 team. Tell me that. Meanwhile, Jonathan Smith, well, maybe also out of one hand negotiating with Michigan State.
Some hot takes about him on social media.
Showing
up over the weekend. We'll maybe touch on that
later,
too.
I'm definitely interested in that. But, last year, you looked at Oregon State and Washington State in a weird season where they were ultimately left behind, and it was the Beaver, and they took their talking points from their head coach, but the Beaver response was, we can control what we can control. Let's try to beat everybody on the field, but we can only control what we can control. Washington State, also taking their talking points from their head coach, was essentially throwing it in everyone's face. Tell me I don't belong. Dare you. I flat out dare. So after the game, Jake Dickert refused to acknowledge that this was any kind of upset of them beating Texas Tech, refused to acknowledge that this was any kind of significant win. He's like, what are you talking about? We've been playing at this level our entire life. We beat a team on our level at home. I kind of like it. Now, I don't know if it was the best play a year ago, but regardless, doesn't matter. They got to win against Texas Tech.
I mean, it's easy talk when you had a 7-game losing streak last year.
But what I'm saying is now you sit there and go like, don't let the people forget you, because there are some people out there. So I want to bring up 21-2 is the Pac-12, former Pac-12 right now. Didn't have to die. 0 is the amount of votes that Oregon State and or Washington State received in the coaches' top 25. Now, we all know that the coaches' poll is a big pile of poo, right? It's a bunch of SIDs who are assigned a task, and then coaches basically said, yeah, you know what? Just don't embarrass me. But the fact of the matter is that you got a couple of teams that are 2-0. And you've got 1-1 teams in there receiving votes. I'm not even saying that both Oregon or State or Washington State should definitely be ranked. I don't know that they should. And quite frankly, I don't know that it matters. But again, I'm bringing up the perception again for Oregon State and for Washington State, and especially this week where you have got two 12:30 games, Civil War, Apple Cup being played. It might be the time to be vocal. And Jake Dickert is all of that. So, yeah. This win against Texas Tech, this was not some significant win. We're not. This was not some sort of upset. We beat a team on our level. We've been playing at this level for 100 years. This is the level of football we play. So I thought that was an interesting statistic because, you know, USC beat LSU. Cal went and beat Auburn. And it's like, oh, big win for the ACC. I mean, technically you're right, but 21-2, gang. Didn't have to die. Didn't have to die. And the reason I bring it up, and these stats will slowly go away as we get into actual conference play for all of these teams. But once again, the perception was always, well, if you want to play with the big boys, you got to go to the ACC. You got to go to the Big 12. You got to go to you got to go to the Big 10, and that's where the money was, and the TV executives and Brent Yormark and Tony Petitti and all of these conference commissioners were all guilty in terms of destroying the Pac-12. But the idea that, well, you have to, because the Pac-12, they just you couldn't, the strength of schedule, like, it just wasn't 21-2. When did Jordan Hare beat Auburn? Cal did. USC beat LSU on a neutral site. One of those two losses is Colorado's getting demoralized by Nebraska.
Oh, you see Shadur leave the field before the game was over.
Okay, now there might be something there about he might have gotten a concussion or was being evaluated for a concussion. But what I do know was that after the game, again, blaming his offensive line in week 2, again. How many times are we going to blame the offensive line?
It's interesting because two of those 5 offensive linemen are starting for Oregon State, and Giovanni McCoy didn't really get touched this weekend, so it's kind of funny how that works. It's just, but, eat rocks, Dion.
All right, we got 40 seconds here for me to make a Dion thing, and then we're going to move on to other more important, pressing issues. But yes, Colorado once again proving that it's fun to talk a big game, and the idea of, oh, we want to be a big-time college football program. Boy, that's really, really – 90,000 people at a jacked-up Memorial Stadium in Nebraska. It's like, yeah, well, offensive line. How many times did Raiola get touched? Yeah, weird. You know, Nebraska, they got a second-year coach, too. And instead of going on a book tour during the offseason, you know what Matt Rule did? Oh, yeah, he went out and got some linemen. He doesn't have assistant coaches fighting each other on – do you see the video of the Colorado coaches fighting each other? Outside of practice. While Warren Sapp is they were watching the video and somebody got a video of him essentially putting narrating it. Yeah, instead of doing all that, yeah, they put their boots on and went to work. And yeah, how many times did he get touched? Well, you know, when you get and we can't run the ball, our offensive line stinks. Like, they're your guys. You went out and got him. Blamed a receiver. Said, oh, yeah, he made a rookie mistake. Like, okay.
It's so satisfying. It's almost as satisfying as watching some other ex players not do well on their new teams.
So, here's what we've got coming up next. A lot of Oregon fans hitting that panic button. I understand panic button. Maybe it is time to press the panic button. Maybe I'm being too much of a homer, but I have reaction to Oregon's 3-point last-second win over Boise. Still a win, not an overreaction. I'm going to give you what I think is a fairly nuanced reaction, and then I got my Oregon homer opinion. And, Brenden, we might have to fire up the Oregon Homer alert coming up next segment as well.
Oh, we will.
Because it's sitting out there. Because I've got a Homer take as well. But we talk Oregon, Boise, and we lead in to the first ever September Civil War all week long. That's next, 620 Rip City Radio. Yeah, it is interesting. The expectation monster is what we're going to be talking about here for the next 20 minutes. And there's a lot of factors that go into the old expectation monster. I've been saying it all offseason long. Everybody's asked me, Justin, what's your biggest worry about the Oregon season? Because obviously everybody was patting Oregon on the back in June, July, and August. And unfortunately, that's not when championships are won. That is won in September, October, and November. But everybody was patting Oregon on the back and pumping them up and predicting, because it's what we do. It's talking season in June, July, and August. It's football playing season for the guys in September, October, and November. And during talking season, a lot of people, when you look at the amount of big-time athletes that Oregon went out and got in the transfer portal and the recruiting they've been doing over the last 2 years under Dan Lanning, on paper, this was an Oregon team that was set to be able to compete with Texas, with Ohio State, and with Georgia. Well, I think after 2 weeks, we can put those right to bed. It's not what this season is going to be, at least not what it seems like. Now, I'm not saying that this season is lost. No. See, that's what the overreactors are doing right now. I'm not going to overreact. I am going to react. I am not going to draw conclusions. I'm going to simply make observations that maybe this team was a smidge, or maybe even more than a smidge, overrated. Oh, no, can't say it. Here's the problem. Overrated is not a bad term. It's not. Feels like it's a bad term because anytime there's an upset in college basketball, right, and the kids, they start chanting overrated, and it feels like such a big put down. Overrated's not such a bad thing. It's just sometimes a cold dunk of water of reality that you might not be as good as you thought you were. Now, again, mentioned it last hour. Oregon is not blameless in any of this. The preseason Oregon hype coming out of the Hatfield-Dowling complex was as high as any I've ever seen. Whereas in years past, when Oregon would come into a season with an awful lot of expectations, head coach Chip Kelly or even head coach Mike Bellotti would downplay. No, we haven't won anything yet. Dan Lanning is embracing it. And I don't think that's a bad idea. I don't think it's a bad move. Everybody's got their own pathway, but Dan Lanning and this Oregon team and this Oregon athletic department has embraced the fact that Oregon preseason was hyped up as a potential national champion. Kirk Herbstreit and Desmond Howard, I think, might be changing their national championship picks if they were asked on game day coming up on Saturday, considering that Oregon now is 2-0, but a 10-point win against Idaho and a 3-point win against Boise State, not exactly lighting the college world on fire. By the way, you know what else adds to this whole expectation monster thing? The prominence of sports gambling. Negative 54. Brenden, you know what that number is? You know what that number is significant? Negative 54.
That Oregon against the spread?
That is Oregon against the spread in the first 2 weeks. They were 49.5-point favorites, won by 10.
That's why I brought up the spread with Oregon State to you this morning.
So now Oregon State is a 14-point dog. That number might continue to come down, but Oregon is negative 54
Not good.
Against the spread this year. Now, again, what does it all mean? Let's dive into it. Here's the reality. This right now is not a team that can compete for a national title. Can this team compete in the Big Ten? Absolutely. Can this team get better as the season goes along? They certainly seem like they have the physical ability. Can this team make the college football playoff? Yeah, they can. This team goes 10-2. They're going to make college football playoff. Now, going 10-2 is a whole lot different now, or at least the outlook now, in a absolute dogfight against Idaho and a dogfight against Boise State. But I've got an Oregon homer pathway coming up in a minute. We'll just put that on the back burner. Here's the reality. This is what college football really, in Oregon, is kind of supposed to be. And as much as I hate to do it, tip of the cap to our good friend Aaron Fentress, who brought this up. Look, you're replacing Bo Nix. Now, Bo Nix had some troubles yesterday up in Seattle. He threw a couple of picks that hopefully he's going to learn from, that in the NFL, you can't make those throws anymore. But say what you will about Bo Nix, in Oregon, he was special. Even in the losses against Washington, Go look back at his numbers. He was one of the reasons why those games were so close. Bo Nix was a special, special quarterback in Eugene and one of the greatest football players in Oregon football history. You can't deny that. Everybody still wants to get hung up on his sophomore year at Auburn. Look at the 2 years he was at Oregon. One of 4 Oregon Ducks to be sitting in New York when they gave away the Heisman Trophy in program history, a program that dates back to the 1800s. 4. He was one of them. So you're replacing one of the greatest quarterbacks in Oregon football history. And I know Oregon fans don't like to bring that up a lot because he was an Auburn quarterback and he's one of the greatest quarterbacks in Oregon football history. And now you're replacing that guy. Dylan Gabriel seems to have a lot of arm strength. He threw for 240, didn't throw a pick, had a couple of touchdowns. But when you look at what Bo Nix was able to do, Dylan Gabriel's not there. He's not there. And that's not a knock against him. You're talking about one of the greatest players in Oregon football history. Oregon's still kind of figuring out who their bell cow running back's going to be with Jordan James and Noah Whittington. But it was clear last year when Oregon needed 3 yards, Bucky Irving was able to give it to him because Bucky Irving was an All-American running back. And now you're replacing that guy. It felt like finally Evan Stewart kind of stepped into that role as the number one receiver, did catch a touchdown, and Trayshawn Holden has explosive ability. And obviously it was more special teams than catching, but Tez Johnson is also an explosive player. While he only had 3 catches, did have the punt return for a touchdown, which turned out to be the difference maker in the game, by the way. Not Tez, but maybe we hold on to the football through the end zone. But all 3 of those guys are trying to replace Troy Franklin. And again, I've been watching Oregon football my entire life, and there are some fantastic receivers, guys whom I love. Troy Franklin was the best. So you've got one of the greatest quarterbacks in Oregon football history playing for the Denver Broncos, alongside one of the greatest receivers in Oregon football history, who's also playing for the Denver Broncos. Bucky Irving is in the NFL. Jackson Powers Johnson is in the NFL. He won the Remington Award. You're replacing all of those guys. That's a lot. Now, transfer portal, NIL has changed the game. But as much as Oregon fans want to believe it, Phil Knight's money and Nike's money can get you a long ways. I still don't know if it makes you Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. Still don't know if it makes you that. Now, we'll find out. Maybe this team can get it figured out. And maybe by October 12th, we're looking at a completely different team than the team we saw on the field against Boise. Maybe also, as we have seen in other places, when you put enough transfers together, including at the most important positions, right? Quarterback, kind of the most important position. And you got to transfer there. Then maybe it's just going to take some time to build some cohesion. There is problems on the offensive line. More on that in a moment. But to me, I think the biggest issue with Oregon in a 2-0 team, who's still ranked in the top 10, by the way, but the biggest issue with Oregon right now is the expectation monster, is the realization that Oregon fans and coaches and boosters wanted this team to be the same as Ohio State, the same as Texas, the same as Georgia, and they're not. And that's okay. It's okay. Doesn't mean you can't get to the playoff. Doesn't mean you can't make some noise in the Big Ten. Doesn't mean the season is all for a loss. It simply means that what you thought in July isn't what this team is right now. And it shouldn't be a surprise because, like I said, and I always bring up my my geology class in sophomore year, where I was like, I don't know anything about rocks. I took a whole class, took a final, passed it, and then guess what? Forgot everything about rock. We do that with football all the time. We have got years, some of us decades of football that we have watched. And yet, every February, Super Bowl happens, we squeeze that sponge, and we just forget it all. Oregon's got to replace Bo Nix. Oregon's got to replace Bucky Irving, and Oregon's got to replace Troy Franklin, and they got to replace Jackson Powers Johnson. Not to mention a handful of guys on the defensive side of the ball. It might take some time. Now, the good news is you haven't stumbled along the way. And Oregon will likely, unless disaster happens at Reser, which is, again, not out of the realm of possibility. Boy, Civil War looks a whole lot different now than it looked in August. But unless disaster strikes at Reser, Oregon likely favored in every game up until they face Ohio State. They're favored by 2 touchdowns against Oregon State. They go on a bye. They're going to be favored on the road against UCLA. And probably favored against Michigan State at home. Those are your games leading up to Ohio State, where you're not going to be favored. So you have got some time to kind of figure some things out, but this is a team that is replacing a ton of incredible special players. And you're plugging and playing with guys out of the transfer portal, which I think is the right way to do it. But with no preseason, with limited practice time, it's going to take some time for cohesion. And this is why football is the best. You can build a monster on paper. They don't play well together, you don't win. Or you don't play up to, but you can win, but you don't play up to your peak. That's why I love football. It is a true team sport. Basketball, you put LeBron with 4 other guys, they're going to be fine. Right? In football, you can put the best team on. If they don't play together, if there's no cohesion, you can get beat. And nearly got beat on Saturday. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, probably. A couple of kick returns helped out. So there's that. Now, here's the biggest problem I think that Oregon has. Offensive line is not elite. And you are, I think, coaching this team as if you have an elite offensive line. Right? You look at some of the play calling. The Boo Birds came out, Brenden, on Saturday. The Boo Birds came out, and Oregon's in a dogfight against Boise. And
I saw that. I think
they run 3 consecutive run rights, thinking that you've got an elite offensive line, and the Boo Birds came out. Now, there's also a bunch of drunk Oregon fans who are probably unhappy that they're in a dogfight in the third quarter against Boise State.
Maybe just be happy it's a good game. You know, they've had that thrown out to me this weekend.
In the moment's a little bit tough, though. You know what I mean? Like, in the moment.
I don't actually. That's why I said, like, it's a completely different feeling that I've never had.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like to have a team that's just expected to win every week. Mm-hmm. So, like, when I see other teams and fan bases, because save me the alligator tears, man. Oregon.
Crocodile tears.
Just pearl clutching. Oh, my goodness. You're not as good as you thought you were. Own up to it.
I think I've just done that for 15 minutes.
Not you, but just the Oregon fan base in
general.
Shall
I be the voice of the Oregon fan base, though? Because I am an idiot Oregon fan. I am.
I don't know if I'd use that term. Homer. How many know who Homer is? You were wise, Justin. No,
I had dreams of them shutting down Alshon Jeanty, and boy, that was really stupid of me. That dude's really good.
Like, I just think back to when you were at Big Ten Media Day, and I think, like you said, I think you just have to call a spade here. We all thought Oregon would be better. What we've seen in 2 weeks is not it. That's why they've fallen 7 spots in the polls.
Yeah.
I think where they are...
I still think they might be a little bit overrated at 9.
Yeah, I mean, where they are is probably accurate. I told Justin this morning, they're probably still a playoff team, but to think they're in the same category as Ohio State, who I think has beat 2 teams to 0 in 2 weeks.
They really have.
It's not there.
Or what Texas did at Michigan on Saturday.
It was so impressive.
Or what Georgia is doing, just like, I mean.
So who knows? Football's a long season. But early on, it's not quite what was expected. And I think going back to your point, that is, I remember Fentress when he came on the show like a month ago. I know no one wants to hear it. But historically, when Oregon lost their top quarterback, their top running back, and their top receiver, the next year had some growing pains.
They always do.
And we're seeing it play out that way.
They always do. Now, shall I give you my Oregon homer pathway.
Only if I'm allowed to throw a challenge flag.
Well, I don't think it's too homerish, but like, okay. This team as it is right now, right? All right, so you beat Boise by 3. And save me that, well, you only get one. Maybe this team's better than we thought they were. And if Oregon fans like, is Idaho better than we thought they were? Like, no, they're not. Even though, by the way, Idaho did beat Wyoming this weekend.
Wyoming's maybe the worst team in Power 5. But yes, that's fair.
They won.
It's fair. Yep, they did.
They went to Wyoming and they beat the dog out of the Jared Allen.
Pride of Lake Oswego, man. Keep still getting it done.
Boy, the Idaho Vandals. I'm rooting hard for those guys. But if you're an Oregon fan and if on Saturday last week you were like, is Idaho better than we thought? It's like, you don't then get to go, is Boise better than we thought? And you knew Boise was going to be good. Everybody throughout the summer said Boise was going to be one of those teams that could be there at the end of it as a potential playoff team. You knew Boise was going to be good. And if you want to play for a national title, you don't win that game at home by 3. But that being said, Oregon's favored against the Beavs by 14. I've got enough, even though I know this game's in September, I've got enough Civil War games in my life to know that you throw out, and especially now because I think the Beavs kind of can smell some opportunity heading into this game, and I think they're going to be motivated from a different standpoint. We're going to have a week to talk about that, but Oregon's going to be favored in that game. Well, they are favored by 14. Then Oregon goes on the bye. They're going to be favored against UCLA on the road at the end of September. UCLA has a bye. UCLA had even though they won a disastrous game against Hawaii. I don't think UCLA is going to be very good. Then you get Friday night game at home against Michigan State. Now Michigan State did win, but I don't know about Michigan State coming into Autzen. There's going to be a lot of Beaver fans there hanging out with Brenden on that Friday night, rooting against Jonathan Smith. But
I got a watch party already planned at my house. It's going to be great.
In the next 3 games, Oregon State, UCLA, Michigan State, and you have a bye in there, a loss would be disastrous in any of those games. That would be a very significant loss in any of those games. If you win all 3 of them, which you're going to be favored in, that puts you at 5-0 against Ohio State. Now, as we sit here right now, you might lose to Ohio State by about 20. Might happen. Then you go on the road against Purdue. You get Illinois at home. You have Maryland at home. You have Washington at home. That game scares the daylights out of me. And you have 2 road games in Michigan and Wisconsin on the road. You win your home games. You beat Purdue on the road. And you split with either at Michigan or at Wisconsin. That puts you at 10-2. That puts you in the playoff. There's my optimism. There's my Oregon homer. Now, let me just say this. That is all based on the fact that Oregon's got to get better. You play like you did on Saturday, where you need some special teams to bail you out. You might lose to Michigan State. You might lose to the Beavs on Saturday. You might lose both at Michigan and at Wisconsin. You'll definitely lose to Washington at the end of the year, because here's what I know about Jed Fish teams. They're better at the end of the season than they are at the beginning. And Washington, by the way, if you watch them play against Weber State and Eastern Michigan, they look fairly competent. They are not tripping over themselves. They look competent. Don't look great yet, but they look fairly competent. But it comes right down to, could this team get better? Yeah. But I think it is time to change the idea of what this season could be. And that's tough, because I know there were a lot of Oregon fans that were like, how much is a flight to Atlanta in January? Like, maybe look at how much is a flight to the first round on the road, because that's where this team's looking right now. Well,
the other thing is we need to see Oregon play on the road.
Need to see him play on the road. Well,
again, Dan Lanning still has some ghosts to extinguish at Reser Stadium, so we'll see how that works out.
He got one. You're right. He's 0-1 at Reser Stadium, but it's going to be an interesting game on Saturday.
A lot more intrigue than 2 weeks ago.
So much more intrigue than 2 weeks ago. But speaking of the other team, the Beavs put up a shutout down in Snapdragon Stadium.
Yeah, Justin wasn't alive, or I wasn't the last time it happened. So
boom. So we got a 21-0 Beavs win. We'll talk more about the Beavs as well. As I mentioned, it is Civil War week. But we do have a new top 25 out as well. We'll dive into that as we go on campus next. 620 Rip City Radio. Hey, make sure you listen to Rip City Drive each and every afternoon. Chad Dewey's going to be joining us in hour number 3, but they're going to be broadcasting live from Haven Spa Pool and Hearth in Clackamas Friday, September the 27th from 3 to 6. Dwight and Chad will be broadcasting live to collect new and gently used sports balls for, hey, go sports ball, for the Boys and Girls Club of the Portland metro area. More details on the events page at ripcityradio.com. All right, we had a massive win in college football on Saturday. Near upset. And, again, boy, the former Pac-12 looks really, really good. And a new top 25. Let's go on campus. All right, so last week we had the debate as to who had the biggest win in college football, right? It was USC. It was Miami. There's no doubt Texas had the biggest win in college football, not only beating Michigan, but absolutely, smacking them right in the mouth.
Am I the only one that hates Michigan now? I just look at them, I'm like, you're watching cheaters. Like, it was nice to see them just get their doors kicked in. I know Harbaugh's gone, but just the uniforms are cheaters, man.
I think most of the world's ire is with Jim Harbaugh.
Fair.
And even though Sherrod Moore was right there in the heart of it, cheating just like everybody else at Michigan, I think most people's ire kind of goes in Harbaugh's.
So I'm kind of alone?
Well, I think there's a whole lot of people in the great state of Ohio that are with you, and I saw a lot of Buckeyes celebrate. There were a lot of hook 'em horns coming out of the great state of Ohio.
A lot of nuts
on Saturday. But no doubt that was a massive win over the weekend. Oklahoma State, oh boy, narrowly escapes what would have been a pretty big loss. They win in double overtime against Arkansas. And in what was supposed to be a kind of big game in the Big 12, Utah knocked the snot out of Baylor.
It's a big wit and Cam Rising can do, baby.
They're still hanging in there, but Texas with the biggest win over the weekend. As we mentioned, Oregon falls to number 9. Here's your new top 10. Number 1, Georgia. Number 2, Texas. Number 3, Ohio State. Those three, they're on a different level. Alabama, they face Wisconsin on the road. Now, again, I don't think they are going to lose, but that's one of those interesting places. Alabama sitting at 4, Ole Miss 5, Missouri 6, Tennessee 7, Penn State 8. Oregon falls 2 spots after the win, but the fact that they're still in the top 10, considering the other teams, right? If we're all being honest, behind Oregon is Miami and USC. Those 2 teams have significantly better wins. Significantly better wins. Miami went to the swamp and beat the dog out of Florida. Now, say what you will about Florida, but they're a little bit better than Idaho. And USC beat LSU. So the fact that Oregon's still hanging in there in the top 10 is still fairly significant. Utah there is at 12. Oklahoma State, like I mentioned, narrowly defeating
Cam
Arkansas.
Rising did get dinged up in the game, though.
I saw that he
gets hurt so much.
I mean, real quick aside, I do like the fact that college football has been more lenient than not in terms of if you get injured and you can't play, you should be able to continue your eligibility. Like I said, you look at the tiny amount of college football players that are able to play at the professional level. When you're done playing football, you're done forever. It's over. You could play semi-pro but unlike basketball where you can go play, there's always a league where you can go play basketball. You can go play in lots of adult men's baseball league, and you can play golf forever. When you're done playing football, you're done playing football. And if you lose, so you only have so many seasons of college football or just of football in your life. So I like the fact that college football recently, especially with COVID, has allowed a Cam McCormick. He should be able to play. Should be able to play 4 seasons of college football. He was good enough to. But the thing, now that they become more and more lenient, Brenden, we look back and go like, man, these guys get hurt a lot. Because in the past, You get hurt twice, you're gone. It's over. You're out of eligibility, and we don't ever hear from you again. Meanwhile, Cam Rising is kind of like he's a professional football player at this point. He's getting paid NIL, and it's just like, man, he just gets hurt every year. We talk about him like we talk about quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, man, he just gets hurt every year. It's because you're getting extra years to actually get hurt.
Yeah, just to show that the world is small. It was funny because I follow a few Utah people on Twitter and was seeing kind of, obviously Rising got dinged up. It's a hand injury, right? Mm-hmm. They're tricky. I mean, you remember a few years back, Justin, when Vernon Adams had hand injuries for quarterbacks are tricky, especially quarterbacks that run with the ball, right? But interestingly enough, there were some Utah fans who were already feeling so good about themselves. They were clamoring for the backup, who happens to be.
Is it that pig farmer guy?
No, he's at Utah State now.
Oh, okay.
No, Isaac Wilson, younger brother of Zach Wilson, 4-star freshman quarterback.
Gotcha.
So apparently they all think that the younger Wilson's going to be the next coming. So they're like, hey, put in Isaac Wilson. We're good with it. So Utah already feeling good about themselves.
How long?
And why not? They have a good team this year.
I'm sure in some deep recesses of Oregon Twitter, I'm sure I've heard probably some Dante Moore whispers. Again, that's deep. Not any, even the doofusy fans, which I am one sometimes, haven't gone that far yet. But boy, if Oregon has a game against Oregon State going into a bye, do those whispers? Do they get a little bit? How long before crazy, insane Oregon fans start saying the word Dante Moore? It's going to happen.
I mean, we talked about it.
Unless they blow out Oregon State or UCLA in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And show like offensively that they are capable of putting up a 50 burger or something, which I don't know if they are.
Right.
And
I mean,
you're going to start hearing it.
I mean, I'll say this too, like, Justin, we just talked about it. I know it's not what you want to hear, but say Oregon, again, their first road game, they haven't looked good in 2 weeks.
I know.
Say they stumble.
Oh, boy.
It doesn't keep them out of the playoff.
Yeah, but if they lose...
You could run the table in the Big Ten at that point.
But what I'm saying is please take this in the spirit it's intended. If you lose to Oregon State, you're not capable of running the rest of the table in the Big Ten. You're going to lose to Ohio State. You're going to lose to Michigan. You're probably going to lose to Wisconsin. And now
Ohio State, I'll give you. I think it's I get what you're saying, but I do think
if you're capable of stumbling against Oregon State, you could lose to Michigan State. You could lose to Maryland.
That's fair. I think back to like last year when Oregon had that game against Texas Tech on the road, right? Probably their worst. Like that first road game couldn't be. That's why I said like the timing of the Civil War is just uncanny this year.
I know. All right. Speaking of Civil War, Oregon State did get a win on Saturday. They got a 21-0 victory, shutting down San Diego State. So we'll dive into that. More college football talk as we head into hour number 2 next, 620 Rip City Radio.
7 a.m. on a Monday. Brenden Slaughter with you for Rip City Mornings. The Oregon Ducks took down Boise State 37-34 in a seesaw affair that saw Atticus Sappington kick a game winner in the final moments to hold off Boise State. Oregon State, meanwhile, shut out San Diego State 21-0 on the road, their first road shutout since 1976. The two teams will meet at Reser on Saturday at 12:30. And the Seahawks have started the Mike McDonald era with a 26-20 win over Bo Nix and the Broncos in Seattle. Chad Dewing was at that game. He's going to be joining us in the third hour to talk about that and a whole lot more. You got Rip City Mornings, Hour 2, coming up.
Welcome back to Rip City Mornings, everybody. Hopefully you're having a fantastic Monday. 20 minutes from now, we have got Make or Miss. Coming up in about 45 minutes, stuff we saw on the internet, and mentioned it at the opening of the show. I'm going to mention it again. Just kind of the way we are going about football season on the big show is Monday is college football day. Unless Oregon and Oregon State both just fade off into oblivion, shout out Mike Tyson, Monday is going to be college football day. We shall talk NFL, and we've got a lot of fun NFL stuff to talk about, but that's going to be on Tuesday's show because we've got so much Oregon stuff, Oregon State stuff. It's Civil War. Also, we've been an hour into this show. Haven't talked about Notre Dame yet. That's going to be coming up in a moment.
I did call that.
You called it?
Remember we talked to the team who was going to be
not
likely to finish the top 25?
Got ya. I was like, you called Northern Illinois? I don't know.
But I said Notre Dame's not going to do it this year.
But we're going to talk about that in a moment. But on the big show, we are going to spend a good chunk of Mondays talking college football from over the weekend. And then on Tuesdays, we are going to be very NFL heavy. So we have not forgotten the NFL. We're not ignoring the NFL. We just want to give it its own day, and that's going to be on the Tuesday show. If you are new to the program, hey, welcome. We appreciate you. If you could tell a friend if you like what you hear. If you're hanging out with us, welcome back, as it is a fantastic Monday. Talked about a ton, obviously, of Oregon in hour one. It's time to react. It's not time to overreact. All right, after week one, you could sell me on a sluggish performance, maybe overlooking Idaho a little bit, maybe reading their own headlines a little bit, maybe a little too big for their britches, as people in my neck of the woods used to say. They don't say britches anymore. That's a phrase that just has gone away, right? They used to did you know, like in the South, they used to call football pants britches? Georgia with the silver britches. Anyways.
I did not know that.
Maybe in week one you could have sold me. This team's a little too big for their britches. Week two now comes and goes, and Boise has a legit playmaker in Ashton Jeanty. That guy is going to be playing football on Sundays. He went for a $192, including a 70-yard touchdown, which reignited the game. But all in all, when you watch Maddox Madsen, and he made some throws, but dude threw 17 of 40 for a $148. The fact that they couldn't throw the ball and you're still in a seesaw back and forth dogfight. The fact that Oregon outscored them, and they always talk about the middle eights, right? Coaches love talking about the middle eight. Last 4 minutes of the second half, last 4 minutes of the first half, first 4 minutes of the second half, third quarter, most important quarter. Oregon gets 13 points in the third quarter. Seemingly ready to put the game on. Nope. You lose containment of the only player that they got. Now, I get it. That dude's a baller. He's a baller. But At some point, as a defense, doesn't Tosh Lapoy have to be like, guys, Maddox Madsen can throw all day long. If we do not contain Jeanty, we're we're in trouble. And they were, as they got outscored 14-10 in the fourth quarter. Luckily, though, got the ball at the right time, kicked a field goal, escaped with the win. But there are two realities here. Maybe I'll add a third, because I don't know about the third. But here's what I know for certain. Oregon at the beginning of the year, number 3, was overrated. It's not an indictment. It doesn't mean your season is over. Justin, you just said overrated. Yeah, they were overrated. They're not the number 3 team in the country. They're not the number 9 team in the country. Let's be honest. It's a benefit from the way that the rankings have always worked, but I don't know if that's the number 9 team in the country. That's a reality. Oregon was overrated. Second reality is the offensive line is talented, but they have got some problems. I don't know if it's cohesion. I don't know if it's, again, maybe a little overrated. I don't know if it's some guys playing out of position. I don't know enough about the X's and the O's, but I do know that Dylan Gabriel's been sacked 6 times this year. 2 games, he's been sacked 6 times this year. All of last season, Bo Nix was sacked 6 times. That's a massive discrepancy when you look at the amount of times, because Oregon, whether it was Bo Nix getting rid of the football, and call him Charlie Checkdown all you want, he didn't take sacks. Whether it was Bo Nix getting rid of the football and maybe covering some stuff up, or maybe it was just you had an offensive line that had cohesion last year. The fact of the matter is Oregon has been living a blessed life for the last couple of years because having to deal with quarterback sacks. And if you look at this game, there were so many opportunities. And again, I look at this game through green and yellow glasses. But there were so many opportunities for Oregon to put Boise on their heels, which is going to bring me to the third thing. Boise State came out hot. They came out hot. It was, what was that? I think it was 10-7. And then there was a point, Oregon goes, boom, boom, touchdown, stop. They take the lead at 14-10 and are poised with the football, all the momentum. Otson's going crazy. Boise's on their heels. You can put this game in the second quarter, because Justin, the second quarter doesn't matter in terms of the outcome. I've seen it before. You put a team on the road, on their heels, and what happens? Holding call, on a bad hold. Not that could have gone either way. No. Holding call on a tight end out in the middle of the field that everybody could see. Then Trayshawn Holden gets a personal foul penalty. Then Oregon takes a sack. Boom, boom, boom. Now you're punting. You give them the ball back at midfield. Boom, boom, boom. They go to momentum's gone. Which tells me that I don't know if this team is a smart football team. And again, I'm not saying that the players are dum-dums. What I'm saying is we've seen football teams that understand the moment, that understand where you can't get a penalty, where you can't do something silly. Like, I don't know, drop the ball at the 1-yard line. Now, luckily, Oregon got past that. But you look at the personal fouls, some of the holding penalties, dropping the football early. I know that this team was overrated. I know that this team has to get better at the offensive line, and they could. I don't know it yet, but this may not be the smartest football team. It may be an undisciplined football team. Who knows? And maybe that's coaching. Maybe that's just part of the transfer portal, right? You bring in these guys. You don't exactly know who you are getting. And you're going to have to coach them up. But that's another problem where you look at the penalties and penalties are going to happen. I get it. But it's the timing of the penalties. So you've got all the momentum. You can't hold there. Trayshawn Holden, you're right there on the sideline, pops up. Guys talking a little trash to you because it's Boise, and they're in a ball game with you, and you pop him in the helmet right in front of the official? On top of that, it was after you went out of bounds. So it's a 15-yard personal foul, and second down's already over. So it's not even, you don't even get to replay the down. So now you've lost a down, lost 15 yards, third down, sack, punt. They get right back in, take the lead. Huge, huge turning point in the game. Also, again, going from the third quarter, you outscore them 13-0 with 2 touchdowns in the third quarter. Missed extra point. Yeah, we don't need to worry about that. Missed extra point. So, Brenden, automaticus, we're done now. You miss an extra point, you don't get to call yourself automaticus.
Well, when you're a turncoat. I mean, when you go from one right to your direct rival. I mean, Atticus Sappington is by far the worst example. Tough.
But you also, when you miss an extra point, you automatic. We're done. We don't call you automaticus because that's the whole point of being automatic is you. And so Oregon then, boom, they take the lead back. They've shut out Boise in the third quarter. Here we go. All you got to do at that point, you can't let Genty get oh boy, 70 yards. Frustration. That being said, you escape with a win.
That's why I said, I think
escape with a win. But Civil War looks very different now than it did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think your frustration should give you some nerves going into this Research Stadium because Oregon State has none. It is house money.
House compared to on fire is how they should be playing.
I mean, like I said, it's like I said, if I'm still gonna probably pick Oregon, but if I'm Oregon, I am nervous as all heck going into Research Stadium because
they've shown zero killer instinct. That's the other thing, and it goes back to like kind of the mental makeup. Oregon has showed zero killer instinct this year.
And maybe they find it. Again, I'm not saying they can't. They are so talented, they probably will figure a lot of things out.
How long do we give them, though? Right? How long does it take to figure some things out?
With the transfer portal, I think taking and building chemistry with a new team can take six weeks.
6 weeks.
Which is crazy, but that's why it's almost like you may stumble early, and I think Boise was the home game to stumble. Now, if they can, I think UCLA and Oregon State are those very, weird road trap games for them where it's like they haven't played on the road. And usually, Justin, playing at home with your crowd can cover up a lot of the issues that we've seen Oregon have the first 2 weeks.
Now, I know that uniforms aren't magic, but sometimes it feels like it. And I know that stadiums aren't magic either, but sometimes it feels like that. For Oregon, and I realize, look, Dan Lanning's been there in year 3. I think they've been to Reser one time. They've been to UCLA one time. But I wonder if there's something to the fact that your first 2 road games of the season are against opponents that you're very familiar with. True. You know about Oregon State and you know about UCLA and you know what it's like to go to the Rose Bowl and you know that there's going to be a library in the Rose Bowl and you know that there's going to be some. Is it going to be cold enough to wear your long sleeve camo? You got the short sleeve camo going on in Corvallis. It's going
to be
it's like 70, I think.
Pretty nice weather, I think, for a noon kickoff. 71, perfect. I mean, all the CW games that were played in 30 in fog. I don't know if there's ever been snow for a game.
I'm sure they've been playing it for 100 years.
Yeah.
I'm sure at some point in November
Not in my lifetime.
it snowed. I can't remember one.
You don't remember one in your lifetime, do you?
No, the worst was 2001. It was hail.
God. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
It was it was rain, and then it might not even been hail. It might have been freezing rain. Anyways, it's definitely changed the makeup of this week. But the changing of this program shall not be affected. We have got Make or Miss. That's coming up next, 620 Rip City Radio. Hey, make sure you listen to Rip City Drive each and every Tuesday afternoon for your shot at scoring tickets to an upcoming Thorns game. That's right. Ticket Tuesday continues in September each and every afternoon, or each and every Tuesday afternoon with Chad and Dwight on Rip City Drive. All right, in an hour from now, speaking of Chad and Dwight, our good buddy Chad Doing is going to join us. Chad was up at the Seahawks-Broncos game. Ooh. You know, wasn't a bad start for Bo Nix. It was a typical start. I mean, Seattle's defense is good. Their defensive backfield's going to keep them in games this year.
They have some dudes. They do. They built their. You know, John Schneider's still there, right? Pete Carroll left.
And Mike McDonald was the architect of the Baltimore Ravens defense for like the last 3 years.
Totally.
Like their defense is going to be good. And Bo Nix learns that, you know, when you get to the NFL, you can't throw across your body off your back foot. Like that throw is out. Like I saw Justin Herbert do it. I remember Justin Herbert's rookie year. And I was I think I was talking to Alex Brink and I was like, Alex, when you saw, like, can you see, like, when young quarterbacks, right when they go to throw, can you even see, like, that, you know, it's just before it even comes out of the hand? He's like, yeah, before it even comes out of the hand. Like, that guy, he's running to his left, he's throwing to his right. I was like, yeah, that ball's going to get picked off. And I love Bo Nix. He's going to go through a lot of growing pains, and one of them is going to be you don't get to backpedal off your back foot and throw it across your body in the NFL. Because every DB in the league is going to be like, that's mine, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Bo that came out, the criticisms were, you know, it was a little like there just wasn't depth, right? They were short throws. Like, I think his average depth of throw was like 3 yards. I mean, that's...
It was yesterday. No, to me, the Oregon thing has been debunked, right? If you look at he was about middle of the road in terms of pass, because they can measure everything now and passes through the air. Like the reason why he got that check down Charlie thing was because that was how Oregon's offense was structured and set up. And by the way, they had scored a lot of points with it, but he had plenty of deep throws. Yeah, in the NFL, it's going to take a little bit of time. It just is.
Yeah, to go from near 80% completion to, I think, 48, that must have been a humbling moment.
Yeah, I don't know if the Broncos, again, I'll go to my Tony Romo voice. Yeah, I don't know, Jim.
So great. It's the time of the year we got to run it, man.
What game did he have yesterday?
I was in the river yesterday, Justin, so I kind of caught all my NFL from my phone and fantasy and
because I was watching
all that kind of stuff. But yeah,
I was watching the Steelers game, and then I was watching Seahawks, and then I was watching Herbert and the Chargers, which look out, Chargers.
They're definitely putting the handcuffs on Herbert, though. It is going to be a run based and.
I think him and Harbaugh both love it that way.
Yeah, I mean,
I think Herbert's like
they could, but yeah, Herbert is very much changing what quarterback he's going to be under Harbaugh for sure.
Anyways, we've got a full day to talk about NFL tomorrow. Chad Dewey is going to be joining us in an hour from now. Right now, let's dive into Make or Miss.
Oh, Justin, thanks to Make or Miss, we're going to talk about the NFL right here.
Okay.
Baby. Let's go ahead and start with easily the biggest and most explosive story of the weekend that we haven't even talked about. So Make or Miss. First, Scotty. Now, Tyreek. Cops need to watch more sports and quit being morons.
Okay. I don't want to... If we have any law enforcement officers who listen to this show, we appreciate you. One, thanks for listening. And two, thanks for doing the work that you do. We learned in the Scotty Scheffler thing that clearly could have been handled 1,000% better. And we learned that through the body cam footage and all of that. What's going to be interesting now is what's going to happen. Okay. There's the one Louisville guy, right? It was a rain. He was brought in because there was an accident and said, I don't know who he was. And I believe him. Brenden, there is, I don't want to say never, but there is no way, shape, or form they didn't know who they were handcuffing.
And putting on the ground.
They were working stadium traffic.
And putting on the ground. More.
They're stadium traffic. He's driving a gajillion-dollar Lamborghini. And now, again, I'm going to be interested to see what happened in the whole thing. I don't know. Could both sides have probably handled it better? I'm assuming, yeah. But that's not a good look. It's not a good look for hold on. It's not for was it Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office or was it? I don't think it was because they look like they were. Either way, whatever police department it is, not a good look to have Tyreek Hill on the ground in handcuffs out as fans are walking to the game. Wearing Dolphins gear, looking to their left, going, is that Tyreek Hill? And then didn't Calais Campbell
also got
he got handcuffed because he went over there to be like, guys, that's Tyreek Hill. We're going to play a game, and then he got handcuffed as well. Yeah, that I don't know right, wrong, by the book. But let me tell you, PR, I do know. I don't know law enforcement protocols, but I know PR. It's a PR mess. It's a PR mess.
Well, when I saw the video where the cops supposedly hit him too, just
PR mess.
It's disgusting and it's unacceptable. And Tyreek Hill said it best when he's like, "What if I wasn't Tyreek Hill? What happens to me?" And we've seen, I don't want to go too deep into it, but we all know, and that's just to
me, I think that's
a very scary situation.
I want to know more about it before I'm going to make an opinion. I think it is. I think it's irresponsible to make an opinion one way or the other until you know exactly what was going on from both sides. And we've heard Tyreek Hill's side. They say there's body cam footage. They say they're going to make the footage available to the public. And
all-time great celebration. All-time great celebration. I
of course he scores a touchdown, right, and a comeback victory, and of course,
it was awesome.
Goodness
Absolutely
gracious, but.
And I'm changing my tune because I remember when he had the whole incident.
Okay, because here's the other thing about this. You Google Tyreek Hill and see, not the best track record with the law. You know what I mean? He had a very serious incident with a significant other in college. Now I'm not saying that should matter one way or the other. I'm just saying I'm very curious to see the body cam footage. Before, and I don't think I'm in a position or I'm comfortable enough to say, well, so-and-so was, who knows?
Yeah,
who was right or who was wrong until we see it. And thankfully, we get body cams now.
Yeah.
Now, if we find out body cams were turned off, well, then we got a problem.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess in my sense, seeing the video that I saw, if he was for reckless driving, there's no circumstances, Justin, where reckless driving has what happened to him happened to him.
No, but there are
That's all I'm saying.
You're right, but I doubt it was because of reckless driving. I have a hunch that something was said, and there was a...
Could be.
As they said in the great movie Cool Hand Luke. Have you ever seen Cool Hand Luke?
I haven't.
Okay, well, in Cool Hand Luke, what we have here is a failure to communicate. And I think I know what happened, but I'm not going to say because I feel like it's irresponsible without knowing. But I think I've got a pretty good idea of how it went down. When you pull over maybe the star player of a football team going to said football game, I have a hunch there was maybe, do you know who I am? And then I have a hunch of I don't care. And then it became a face-off, and the guys with the handcuffs won until all the cell phone cams came out.
Yeah, it's just
it's a mess. It's a mess for the Dolphins. It's a mess for the PD. But
let's just
maybe they can resolve it all. But
let's just talk on the surface, Justin. The fact that two of the best athletes at their respective sports have been arrested before going to a game. Yeah.
Now,
it's unacceptable.
Scotty Scheffler was arrested. Technically, Tyreek Hill was temporarily detained. My wife's a lawyer. I know the difference. But still put in handcuffs.
And on the ground. It's on the ground. It's just I can't. Yeah, it's a really hard image to shake, right?
I'll tell you what, if TMZ doesn't get it, somebody's going to.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. You're right. The body cam will tell us pretty much everything we need to know. But nevertheless, explosive story.
It is nuts that he was in handcuffs one moment, and so was Calais Campbell, and then they not only scored a touchdown, but won an NFL football game.
And made sure to celebrate him. But all that to say, I think it's, and Jeff Darlington, there to do it again. My goodness gracious.
How's Darlington there again? Of all the guys, of all the reporters, Jeff Darlington is there in Miami, and he was first on the scene in Louisville.
So he must be Southeast based?
Yeah, because he does a lot of NASCAR.
Okay, so that makes sense. But yeah, I was like I saw Twitter was just like, oh, Jeff Darlington's there again. I'm like, of course he was. All right, nevertheless, let's move on here on Make or Miss. Got to get to this one. Dak Prescott is now overpaid. Happy he got his deal, but when you consider the guys that he's... Let's look at the list here. Hold on. Let's pull up the list.
Okay. Well, he's never... What has he won? One playoff game? One or two?
You and me have kind of talked about this. Do you value the fact that he had an all-time great season last year statistically?
I do.
Or is it, hey, you haven't done what even Jared Goff has done?
Here's where the Cowboys are in a bit of a pickle, because Cowboys are not ever rebuilding ever under Jerry Jones. They're not allowed to.
Just not.
They're not allowed to rebuild.
Are they the only team that can't? They're in the NFL?
That's a good question. It really is. They might be.
The Niners right now.
But the Niners were rebuilding before.
You're right.
And they've done where they've the Cowboys are never allowed to rebuild. They're just not. Their fan base.
Heck,
their
even
owner,
the Patriots rebuild.
Yeah, their owner. The Cowboys are not allowed to rebuild. So what's the other option other than paying Dak? What's the other option?
There was a better option. I'm not saying there was.
Yeah,
I just think it's just the reality is it's kind of like giving Daniel Jones money. Obviously, much better than Danny Jones. We saw that yesterday. I feel real bad for any New York Giants fans out there. It's going to be a rough year.
It's going to be a rough year. It's going to be I don't know how rough it's going to be in Cleveland, but we may talk. That's going to be definitely a talking point tomorrow. But let's get back to Dak Prescott real quick, because it is interesting. He's now the highest paid player in NFL history. That's timing. That's not based off performance. It's timing. You know what I thought was I got to find the quote. Because I should have had it up. But I've got to find.
While you look for that, I'll pull up some of these salaries real quick. So
okay.
Dak obviously makes $60 a year. Trevor Lawrence is actually the second, or actually three guys, tied for the second highest paid quarterback. Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love. Tua comes in at 53. Jared Goff, Herbie, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, all make above $50 million. We haven't even gotten to the best quarterback in the league. Can we just take a minute and just appreciate that? We're 10 guys in and still haven't got to Mahomes? I mean, that's mind-boggling to me.
So he says being the all-time highest paid player is great, but he said Super Bowl is what matters most. It's my motivation to hold up my part of the deal. Just deliver that. That's my motivation. And I know I'm kind of being nitpicky about this. That wasn't your motivation the whole time?
I know, right? That was funny with the way
you needed to get paid $231 million to be motivated to win the Super. I know it's not, but just the way he said it
read. Totally.
The way it was so now that I've got this money, I got to hold up my end of the bargain, and Super Bowl is what we got to do. It's shouldn't that be your motivation the entire time? That's nitpicky, but it's still interesting. Speaking of motivation, though, 3 hours before kickoff, the deal was finalized?
Something like that.
He signs the deal and then goes and warms up. What a fun day. You get a win, because Cleveland stinks. You get a win, you get $231 million guaranteed. What a September 8th. 2024. Anybody have a better day than Dak Prescott?
It's funny because that was put 231 because Deshaun Watson got 230. You know that was why that was there.
Yeah, that's exactly why it's 231.
Now that being said, on a per year basis, I think it's quite mind-boggling that Deshaun Watson and Kirk Cousins, Justin, gonna make more money this year than Patrick Mahomes. You told me this morning you're like Kirk Cousins might be done. So, we'll see.
I said it in college football, and I'm going to reiterate it both today and tomorrow. I will react to week one. I will not overreact to week one. I have seen some week one disasters in the NFL only to see teams come back and play very well. We have seen much, but that being said, and maybe the Steelers are just awesome on defense this year, which is what I'm really hoping for. And TJ Watt, that guy's still a bad mamma jamma. But
George Pickens had a great game yesterday. Very solid.
All good things in Steeler Nation. But except for Russell Wilson's calf, which, again, we got stuff to talk about tomorrow. But Kirk Cousins did not look good. I don't know, Jim. They did not look like they can move the football at all.
Please go to Penix. Please. I want to see the Falcons.
They can't do that for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Unless an injury happens, I'm saying 8. You can't go to Penix before 8 weeks.
I want to see the Falcons organization look Kirk Cousins in the eye and go, yeah, we gave you $100 million guaranteed, but we're done. I mean, that would be just the most saddest, to see, hey, I mean.
Because you can, though, because if you do go to Penix, he's on the rookie scale.
He is.
You can.
And they
you
can
eat that.
They can pull
$100 million salary.
Yeah, they can pull Broncos and cut him like they cut Russ. I mean,
it's still dead money and stuff, but it's less of a burden. That's why the Broncos were able to do it, because they got Bo Nix on a rookie deal.
That helped.
But yeah, ugh. Tough day for old Kirk Cousins. All right, we got one more?
Yes. Yep. Up next on Make or Miss, Civil War has a lot more intrigue and far more pressure on Oregon than Oregon State.
That is a fact, Jack. Even though your name's Brenden, that is a make.
Don't call me Jack.
It just sounds better.
It's see, that's a spin on when you say "Don't call me Shirley." So I mean, just had to spin that a little bit.
Shirley is like, "Don't call me Shirley."
You say
all-time great line.
Had to spin it.
All-time great line. Now,
can I throw out a stat?
Now you got to give me credit, because I've been saying it since the summer. I said there's something about this game. I've lived through too many of them.
You have.
I've lived through too many of these games, and I still believe that Beaver Nation is going to be out for blood on Saturday for multiple reasons. There's already an anger and a rivalry, and there's already you think you're better than me mentality in Corvallis, which I have always appreciated.
Especially this year.
That's what I'm saying. That's on top of that. Now it's like, you guys can barely beat Idaho. We just put 21 unanswered up on. Now, that game was a very boring football game down in San Diego. We'll see if they're able to. It's kind of fun and terrifying at the same time as an Oregon fan, because we come back to what Civil War kind of was for a long, long time. Two separate styles. Who's going to win? Is it because Trent Bray and it feels like Ryan Gunderson, they want to grind it down and ugly it up.
Oh, my gosh. The Chip Kelly offense is
ugly it up.
I joked, and I know Beaver fans didn't want to hear it, but then when the announcers mentioned it, they're like, Ryan Gunderson with his Chip Kelly roots. And it's like what Justin and I said, you can squint and see things that Oregon was doing 2010, 2011 in Oregon State's playbook now, which is mind-boggling, Justin, because that's not something Oregon State's ever done. This. They've been pro-style and, big, tall, quarterbacks and, all that stuff for so long. Now, that being said, again, as I said earlier, I still think Oregon is probably going to win this game. Now, that being said, I like to look at numbers, Justin, and as little as when the season kicked off, ESPN FPI, which runs, matchup simulations some 1,000 times and everything, it was a 92-8% chance in favor of Oregon to win the game. It is now 68-32.
I know.
Which I think is, and the spread has come down from near 30 to now plus 14. I think it's very fair. I think this is going to be a real gritty game. But for what it's worth, I posed it to Justin last hour. If Oregon State loses this game, yeah, whatever. No, they kind of penciled it in.
Yep.
As I said to Justin, I'm like, what if Oregon loses? And might have thought I was slapping his mama with the look that he gave me. He's like, what?
I know.
So, I mean, would it really be that terrible?
From an Oregon standpoint, yeah.
Of all
the years, yeah, it would be.
Yeah, that's the stark difference of our.
Well, yeah, you come into the season.
Two situations, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and here's the reason. I'll wrap this up here in a couple of seconds. When the deal was made to continue Civil War, some Oregon fans were like, "Why is Oregon giving up a home game?" Because to continue the Civil War, they had to work around a deal and to go to research to continue the odd numbers here, even numbers there. Why? There are some like, why is Oregon giving up a home game? And there was a lot of Oregon fans that go, it's not going to matter, right? Well, That's a little bit different now. And again, I've said there is something still magical about this game, and I think that magic may die off in years to come. But for one more go around, the old high school girlfriend comes back to town, right? There's still
one more platypus trophy, Justin.
Still something about this game that always I don't like it. All right. So we got a whole week to talk about this, which I'm very, very excited about. We've also got stuff we saw on the internet to wrap up hour number 2. That's next here on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, it is time to wrap up hour number 2. Stuff we saw on the internet, and the biggest win, or I shouldn't say the biggest win over the weekend was Texas. I mean, Texas solidified their spot atop the upper echelon teams in college football. I don't know if Texas is going to be better than Georgia, but there's an argument to be made, and clearly the Longhorns in week 2 got really the first kind of statement win of the football season, but the biggest upset of the season so far was Northern Illinois as they go into Notre Dame Stadium and take down the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. And that's a significant win, not just obviously for their program, but it's a significant win in the college football playoff. Because there's a lot of people when you said, hey, there's 12 spots, right? Well, one is already predetermined for a group of 5. So now there's 11 spots. And a lot of people looked at Notre Dame's schedule and was like, well, now you're fighting for 10 because after they beat Texas A&M, they have 2 ranked opponents left on their schedule. One is Louisville, who you get at home, and then you go to USC. And even if they were to drop one of those, well, guess what? I don't know if Notre Dame's going to be there at the end of this whole thing because they lose a game at home to Northern Illinois. After the game, do we have the audio? So this was Thomas Hammock. He is the head coach at Northern Illinois. He's also a Northern Illinois alum, and this is the best thing I saw on the internet all weekend. This was his post game interview with NBC Sports.
A moment. Top 5 opponent. This is NIU's first win against a top 10 opponent ever. And for people who need context, you wore this jersey. It's deep for you. Why?
You know, I'm so proud of our kids, the coaches, just everybody. They believed. They believed. And we came here and got it done.
You told your guys this week that you didn't need anyone to be a superhero or superhuman. They just needed to be their best. What kind of performances did you see out there?
They listened to what I said. I told them all week, we don't need luck. We just got to be our best. And they was their best today, and we was able to get it done.
Where's this emotion coming from for you?
You know, all these guys that have been with our program, been through the ups and downs, and they continue to fight. Yeah. You know, it's like they my kids. I'm happy for the adversity to push through. But, you know, no matter the situation, I just couldn't be more proud. I'm sorry.
No need to be sorry. Boneyard wins is what you call it when you all beat a top 5 opponent, a power 5 opponent. There was 70,000 people in here that probably didn't believe. Why did you all believe?
We got a veteran team, a bunch of guys that have been through a lot of different things, and they work together. Like, we still are in college football. I know it's a whole bunch of other things with the transfer portal and NIL. We still have a family, and they believe in that family in doing things the right way. And I couldn't be more proud of them.
Congrats, Coach. Go celebrate.
Thank you. Hey.
This team. That's why college football is the best. It is. This is like, I know the NFL is great, and we're very excited to talk some NFL on the big show tomorrow. But you don't see that in week 2 in the NFL. The Patriots beat the Bengals yesterday. They were crying. They're pumped up, but what a win! And like I said, that has some monster college football playoff implications from a couple of different places. First off, like I said, Notre Dame, I don't know if they've eliminated themselves, but they might have. I don't know how, like, if they go on the road and beat USC in the final week of the season and run the table, 11-1 Notre Dame, even with the loss to Northern Illinois at home, it probably sneaks into the playoffs. They're not going to have a home game, but they'll probably sneak into the playoffs. One more loss, 10-2 Notre Dame. with a loss at home to Northern Illinois, I don't think they get in. Now, again, it's foolish to try to forecast the upcoming season, and maybe we'll have one of these nutso seasons. But Notre Dame put themselves very much, and here's the other thing. Now, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but when we talked about teams that could ultimately be that group of 5 team, Boise was one of those teams. And I think Boise put themselves in a position with a 3-point loss at Oregon that if Boise wins the Mountain West and gets a victory over Oregon State in that final game of the season, Boise's in the mix.
They also play Washington State.
And play Washington State. So there's two big. But if Northern Illinois wins the MAC, I don't know. They just beat Notre Dame on the road. They got to go to NC State in 2 weeks. Even if they take that loss at NC State, like if Northern Illinois, like they put themselves in a position now. But I don't know. I just when you see that, like, and I loved what he said, which was, hey, there's a lot of college football out there. There's a lot. We talk about NIL, and I don't know. There's a graphic that showed more than half of the quarterbacks in the SEC are making more money than Brock Purdy this year. More than half of SEC quarterbacks are making more than Brock Purdy. And I know we get focused on it, and obviously as an Oregon fan, Oregon fans are frustrated. And a lot of the frustration from Oregon fans is because, NIL was supposed to close that gap, and now that we can pay the players, it kind of closed. Well, there's still fun teams in the MAC. There's still the ability to go into Notre Dame, get a monster win, shake up the college football world, program-defining victory. I mean, those guys are going to be talking like they could lose 4 more games this year. All the players on that team for the next 15 years, like, hey, how you doing? Yeah. Did you play some college football? I did. I played at Northern Illinois. Were you on that team? Yeah, we're on the team that beat Notre Dame. That's how big of an upset that was. That's why I love college football. All right, so we got Chad Doing coming up in hour number 2. We've got an RCM mailbag coming up, and obviously talked a lot about Oregon. Oregon State went on the road and done something that they haven't done since the 70s. We'll talk some Beav football as well coming up next, 620 Rip City Radio.
8 a.m. on a Monday. Brenden Slaughter with you for Rip City Mornings. The Oregon Ducks took down Boise State 37-34 in a seesaw affair that saw Atticus Sappington hit a game winner in the final moments to hold off the Broncos. Oregon State, meanwhile, shut out San Diego State 21-0 down in San Diego. Their first shutout win on the road since 1976. I think that was the Carter administration, Justin? Something like that. Nevertheless, the two teams will meet at Reser on Saturday. And up in Seattle, the Seahawks are 1-0 in the Mike McDonald era after a 26-20 win over Sean Payton, Bo Nix, and the Denver Broncos. Chad Dewing, our guest in 20 minutes, was up in Seattle. We'll get his thoughts on that, his thoughts on Oregon, Oregon State, much more. Keep it locked. Rip City Mornings.
I think that still might have been Gerald Ford.
76 Ford. I
think Fall. I think that might have been old Gerald Ford. Might have still been in the White House. Anyways, welcome back to Rip City Mornings, everybody. Hopefully you are having a fantastic Monday.
Oh, you're right, Justin. There was the election that year.
I knew.
Yeah, Justin was on it, man.
Hopefully you're all having a fantastic Monday. We're having a great time. Last nice day before fall shows up. It's about to start cooking. It's about to be beautiful, but I feel like the heat wave is now beyond. How was your last little dive into the river?
Oh, it was great.
Felt good. Are you retiring your river going gear? I don't know what river going gear you would have, but maybe you're retiring it for the season.
All the floats are in their totes now. Settling away. It was a lot of fun. My buddy, me, and my little dog took our float yesterday.
Yeah, I could not imagine. My dog would not go.
Yeah, she was.
Old Crash doesn't he doesn't do much anymore. He likes to lay in the sun, and he has moved on to his old man laying around days, which I'm not going to deprive him of that. But yeah, I could not even imagine him near a river. Good for your dog.
Yeah,
do you give her a little doggy life vest?
I just sent you a picture so you can take a look and see. But again, as I told Justin, it's relatively easy with Zoe because she is 11 pounds and can fit perfectly into a tiny little float and got her little pink life jacket. But no, yeah, yesterday was awesome. It was great to kind of close it out, Justin. But you can tell the winds are a changing.
Yeah.
River was a little colder, starting to get a little. It's getting to be fall, so it was nice to say a little mic drop and head on back.
It was good. We got an extra week of it.
We did.
Normally, we will wrap it up by Labor Day. We got an extra week of it. I was at a very, very warm wedding on Saturday.
How was the wedding?
Beautiful.
Good
Here's
wedding?
the thing. I love weddings. A little tough, and it's literally right during an Oregon football game. But tough. I felt like I, as an adult, you just have other things and other responsibilities. Was able to watch, keep track of the Oregon game. And then I rewatched it yesterday. It was much easier rewatching it knowing the outcome. I will say that, but also some frustration there. We've talked a ton of Oregon today as minus 54. Negative 54. That's Oregon versus the spread this season. Now, the spread for Civil War game is right as we went on the air a couple of hours ago was at 14. I'm interested to see where the money starts coming in because usually by about Wednesday or Thursday, right, you start maybe seeing some money start changing hands and those lines start moving a little bit, but Oregon is minus 54. Oregon State, meanwhile, is coming off of a road shutout against San Diego State. Now, Brenden, can't say I watched any of this game. As again, I was also at a wedding at the same time, and then obviously had some catching up to do with Oregon, and I had some NFL to watch. But you get the sense in the first 2 weeks because I've talked about it a lot on this show. You can think you know what a coordinator is going to do once they become a head coach. You can think you know what kind of program they're going to run. And then, boom, they run said program. And you're like, oh, I didn't expect that. So, Trent Bray takes over as a head coach. Obviously, his first job as head coach, put out the fire, right? Or stop the boat from sinking, bailing water off the side. We're losing quarterback. We lost head coach. We're losing quarterback. And and putting together the team that he could in the circumstance. Even if they weren't leaving the Pac-12, that's still going to be a tough spot when a coach leaves, and you have to continue to piece a team together, put together the team that he could. And I don't know if this is the dream scenario for Trent Bray, but it's what it is, and he takes the job as a head coach. But it really feels like with him and Ryan Gunderson, they want to ugly up games. And correct me if I'm wrong, you cover Oregon State for a living, Brenden. Obviously much more in tune with the Beavs than I am, but it feels like defense still strength of this team. A shutout on the road, do that. Lost some guys to Michigan State, and a couple of guys to, USC? I think I got a couple of guys.
Starting linebacker, starting safety to USC.
So a couple of good defenders to USC. But when you look at the way that this team was built over the last couple, there's still some fingerprints of the Jonathan Smith era and obviously the Trent Bray defensive era. They want to ugly up games. And I don't, no disrespect to Giovanni McCoy or any of the McCoy family. Good quarterback doesn't feel dynamic quite yet. And if you limit...
Game 2 was so much better than Game 1.
Sure.
Though. Yeah.
But in this situation, you want to limit mistakes. And if you limit mistakes, you keep games close. You keep games close, you got a chance. And it was 7-0 going into the fourth quarter on the road against San Diego. You're fighting off sleep. It's like 11:30 at night.
Oh, so late. I mean, it was a very late night. I think it's Oregon State's only 7:30 kickoff, so I can't complain. Great kickoffs. I mean, Civil War at 12:30 this week. Fantastic.
Love it.
Yeah, early. I
will be about 4 mimosas deep by the time game kicks off.
But no, I think it's I think when you step back and realize that there was big growth from week 1 to week 2, and considering that Oregon State just needs an 8 or 9 win campaign to remain relevant this year in kind of the college football realignment, everything's on schedule. Mm-hmm. Is it as dynamic as you would have liked, to Justin's point? No, but who's going to complain when you step back and, like Justin said with Washington State, when you realize everything that happened to those two schools and they're sitting 2-0?
Yeah,
not a bad start, right? Considering everything that went down. The game itself was very weird. Oregon State definitely didn't seize control of it. It was right there. I had a whole bunch of friends and family that were down there, Justin. They were giving me the Roma, and they're like, we thought it was going to go the other way, Justin. It was 7-0. They wanted to give it away. And, that was kind of fair. So, I think that's what happens when, like Justin said, we're seeing it play out in a different way with Oregon. Oregon State got a whole bunch of transfers and new players. Yeah. And, Oregon State's maybe had a couple easier opponents than Oregon has, for sure. But now when these two teams clash together, I think you're going to have, Oregon State's defense, new players. Oregon State's offense, new players. I mean, Damian Martinez is down in Miami. So I really think this is going to be one of the true civil wars where you just cannot peg what's going to happen.
Well, it goes kind of back to what always kind of made, like, the things that made Civil War special, and I'm going to be talking about it a ton, obviously, throughout the week. But the thing that made Civil War special is, you and I have talked about it growing up in the rivalry. I know we've talked about it with Bill Oram, who's a native Oregonian who grew up in this rivalry. It is a clash of cultures. And for a long, long time, it was a clash of styles, right? When I was a kid, the Beavs were running the wishbone, and Oregon was running the Mike Bellotti West Coast offense that would ultimately lead to the massive success of Oregon football. But because Rich Brooks was the head coach, but Bellotti was running the offense, and they would run. So you would always have that smishmash of styles. And then of course, in the early 2000s, or the mid 2000s, when this rivalry really was at its heyday, you would have Mike Riley running more traditional West Coast pro-style offense, and Oregon's running a Chip Kelly spread out. Even in 2005, when it was Gary Croton, Oregon's running the spread, and you had a contrast of styles. And now we're kind of seemingly back to that a little bit, and that's always been fun, is that Oregon wants to get this game into a track meet, because they know you get into a track meet, usually the team with the best athletes will win. They want to get into a track meet with Oregon State. The Beavs are going to try to muck it up. They are. They're going to try to ugly it up, grind it out, and it's going to be determined the winner's going to be determined by who essentially imposes their own will and who takes control of the style of the game. Because San Diego, now again, I don't know much about Texas A&M Commerce. Couldn't tell you a lot.
Just made the move up to FCS like a year and a half ago. So
got it.
Very, very new to the game.
But San Diego State scored 45 points last week and scored 0 zilch none nada against the Beavs. Now again, that was against Texas A&M Commerce. This is against a team that was won 10 games in the Pac-12 a year ago. They won 10 games a year ago?
8 and then 10.
8 and then
yeah. It's about 18 over 2 years. That's pretty darn good.
Back-to-back bowl games in in the Pac-12, and boom, you get shut out. So, Brenden, from the first 2 weeks, biggest standouts for Oregon State, maybe things you didn't quite see coming, because even you as a guy who's covered this team still was kind of a mystery coming into this season.
It was. It's been a revelation how good the offensive line's been. I mentioned it earlier.
That must be nice. How's that feel?
It is quite good. Like? Hey, no, but Justin Dion said the two guys sucked. Shadur said they sucked.
Shadur says his new alignment sucked too.
Just saying. No,
at some point when you keep calling all the girlfriends you date crazy, right? It might be you. And sometimes when you keep calling all your linemen terrible, maybe it might be. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I mean it is one of those things where had a couple holdovers, brought in 3 new pieces, and I think that, 2 new pieces, and I think that, that helped. And like I said, Giovanni McCoy had to kind of scramble a little bit, but he didn't really, as I recall, I think maybe 1 sack, if that, which was nice to see. Defensively, I'm very curious to know if going into this weekend, pass rush, they did not, they beat San Diego State despite, I think, sacking Danny O'Neal once. He was a true freshman. You didn't put as much pressure on him as you probably would have liked. And now you got Dylan Gabriel coming to town, right? So I think a big key for this game, because, Justin, Oregon State's running game looks good. And it was good.
Yeah, it seemed to be using 3 running backs.
Yeah, and it looks like it's like Damian, it's early, but it's like Damian who? Like they had a lot of depth at the position, and, another Colorado transfer. Dion said Anthony Hankerson wasn't it either, and he's been a nice player so far. Like I said, you can't really complain much about the defense after 21 zip. I'd like to see Giovanni McCoy be more dynamic. Does he pull the ball against Oregon? Does he run? We ran a lot of zone reads, Justin, where he has not pulled that ball.
Yeah, because 2 rushes? Two rushes in the game? Yeah.
They've been vanilla, and have they been vanilla on purpose? That is the question. That is the question.
Jim.
But yeah, so, it's better than expected, I think. Justin, I safeguarded myself against a terrible season this year. You know what I mean? So, I knew, hey, worst case, maybe they go 3-9 or 4-8. I think now it's pretty safe to say they're going to go bowling. They're going to reach that term. How good of a season probably depends on how well Giovanni McCoy develops. So TBT on that.
Yeah, that's kind of everybody
outside
of the top, really the top 3 teams. Because as nuts as it sounds, Oregon's in the top 10, and it's like, how good are they going to be? Well, they're going to be as good as Dylan Gabriel takes them, or their offensive line, for that matter. Other than that, we kind of know what Oregon is.
True.
It's your offensive line, and it's going to be Dylan Gabriel, and it's going to be the same thing for Oregon State, right? You can ugly it up against San Diego State, and certainly against Idaho State. You can maybe kind of hold the cards close to the vest. But yeah, at some point in the season, your quarterback's got to make a play. Right. And I will credit Dylan Gabriel with that, because it was a tie game, needed to drive, and made some plays. Made enough plays to give Sappington a chip shot, even though
it was that was
sometimes
helpful.
He misses chip shots.
That was helpful.
But don't we all?
But no, last point on that, Justin. I think that, to that point, it's going to be very interesting to just see how, like you said, the styles contrast. We'll be talking about it all week, but a lot of intrigue in the game, and I'm excited for it, man. It's on Monday. I'm pumped.
It's going to be an interesting day. It really, really is. Speaking of interesting day, day always gets more interesting when Chad Doing joins the show. So one of the hosts of the Rip City Drive, he's up early. He's going to be hanging out with us here next on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, very excited to welcome in our next guest. He is A, he is a friend of the program. B, he's a Rip City Radio family member, co-host of the RipCityDrive. And C, he is my brother in hot takes. It is time to welcome back our good friend Chad Dewey to talk a little ball. Chad, how we doing, bud? Oh, no. Yeah. Yes. Well, first off, should we maybe we should change it to like friend zone of the program? You know, because like you get friend zoned. It's like you always know, like I'm gonna, hey, you up? You're like, you hanging out? So maybe you're like friend zoned. Also, as I know, as radio Chad, you are one thing, but you are also sometimes boss Chad. And so if we could go a little behind the curtain, and you put out the initiative to producers that, hey, it is Civil War week. Make sure we focus in on Civil War week. And then when we did have a guest fallout, producer Brenden went into employee mode and was like, all right, I don't need boss Chad getting on my case because we don't have a guest for Civil War week. That's when you have to be like, and that's when you have to call me like, Justin, I hate to do this, but can you just stop breaking microphone stands? Like it would really by the way, made it through the summer. We're still hanging in there on the microphone stand. All right. We are now past this it was a self-issued probation, right? I went like Arizona State. Like, we're not going to go to a bowl game this year. Like, you weren't, but we're not going to go to a bowl game, and it made yourself feel better. But let's hey Chad, let's talk some ball. All right, I have said with Oregon, I am not pressing the panic button, but there seems to be certain realities with this Oregon team that we didn't think were going to be a thing 2 weeks ago that are there now, and that I know it sounds like a dirty word. They were overrated. They're not the third best team in the country. They were overrated. And I think B is the offensive line, which is a talented group, but is not an experienced group, especially with one another. But I've said with Oregon, I think it is okay to react to what is going on. I think it's still foolish in week 2, sitting at 2-0, to overreact to where Oregon is right now. And I've seen some overreaction, but I think it's time to react for Oregon football. Where are you at?
And I think that's put Dylan Gabriel and the receivers in a difficult spot because they don't have the timing and the rhythm within the offense without the run game or the threat of the run game to be able to get things done. And so I'm hoping when they get their left tackle back and they get the pieces kind of into places where they're supposed to be, that they'll get better. And the other good thing is that, you know, you have the beginning part of your schedule. They've got multiple games coming up that are very winnable, that they'll be heavy favorites in before they play Ohio State. So they've got time to work out some of the kinks that we're seeing right now. But you're right. I think going into the season with the expectation that they were going to compete for a national championship, that they were one of the 3 best teams in the country, and over the first 2 weeks, that's not the case. I think people panic, but remember, your goal is not to play your best at the start of the season or to be the best at the start of the season. You want to get better incrementally as you continue to move through the year and be playing your best ball by the end of this season. So there's still time before they take on Ohio State to kind of work out some of the kinks in the offensive line. And if they can do that and find balance, the defense is loaded and they're going to be fine on that side of the ball. I would rather be winning games with defense than offense. So there's time to work things out, but definitely a little concerning to see the struggles that we've seen offensively over the first two games.
By the way, I know you love numbers. I know you love fun stats. This is not a fun stat, but it is an interesting stat. Negative 54, Chad. Negative 54. That's Oregon in 2 weeks against the spread. They are negative 54.
That's not good. If you're a bettor and you have not been fading the Ducks through the first 2 weeks, you're frustrated. I thought that Oregon would come out and blow out Boise yesterday. I thought they would respond, but they didn't have the pieces on the offensive line that we thought going in. And once again, we saw the struggles. And we're seeing that with Dylan Gabriel, who's been razor sharp through the first 2 weeks, but he's been, misfiring on a couple of throws. And I think that comes down to just not having the time to set his feet and deliver the football the way that he's accustomed to. And therefore, he's missed a couple of plays in both games where if you have the time to set your feet, throw the football, you make that big play, it probably changes the outcome or the spread in the game. So, it's just a matter of getting those pieces figured out on the offensive line. And once they do, then they're going to be fine. If they don't and they continue to have issues or they suffer injuries up front, that could spell bad news when Ohio State comes to town.
Chad Doing, the host of Rip City Drive, joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. One last thing on the Ducks from Saturday. I know coming into the game, Ashton Jeanty had that big game against Georgia Southern and obviously coming off of a pretty good season last year. And all of a sudden, I was like, well, Oregon's going to like you said, bounce back. They're going to focus on Jeanty. There's no way they're going to – the fact that that Tosh Lupoi and the Oregon defense were probably hammering it home all week long that if anybody can beat us, we're not going to have it be Jeanty. And he still dropped a $190 on him with 3 touchdowns and that 70-yarder. That is a ball player. Boise's got themselves a weapon.
I was sitting next to a scout at the press box at the Seahawks-Broncos game yesterday, and I was just asking him questions about different players. I would give him a number. He'd give me his assessment. But I asked him about Jeanty, and he said that's definitely the number one back in college football, will be the number one back taken in the draft. And what he said he liked so much about him is, one, he's got the speed to take it to the house no matter where he's at on the field, but he said the patience and the vision to see the offense, to allow his blocks to set up, and then knowing when to accelerate and explode, and also having that low center of gravity and the balance that he's just a tough back. Jeanty, whether it's Oregon or it's Georgia Southern or whoever else they play, he's going to put up big numbers and be dominant throughout the course of the year. There's no shame in getting beat on occasion by a player like that. He's that good.
Chad Doing, the host of Rip City Drive, joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. Let's get to the big matchup. This is why I love having you on the show in September, because you, like me, are obsessed with college football. You love college football the way that I love college football, and so we're going to go kind of around the college football world. Texas put a big statement on Saturday to not just the rest of the SEC, but the rest of college football. I'm with you. I still think Georgia is the best team in the country. I think when you look at their talent, but boy, what a statement by Texas. And I know as a Boomer Sooner, that can't feel good. I know you feel a certain way when you see that burnt orange, but boy, Texas is talented. They are fast. And what you need in college football, Chad, is a little bit of nastiness. And boy, did they got it.
Yeah, my Nana taught me at a very young age, hey, Chad, they're from Texas, and we don't like people from Texas. And so it was kind of ingrained to me at a young age to hate on Texas, and it drives me crazy to see the burnt orange so good. But, Sarkisian's doing a heck of a job of, number one, recruiting, getting the type of talent they need to compete on that level. And they're so sturdy up front on the line of scrimmage, both offense and defense. And we saw them go into Michigan. And look, Michigan's not the same team they were last year because they lost so many players, including their head coach, Jim Harbaugh. But they're still a physical football team, and Texas went in there and just absolutely curb stomped them and dominated at the line of scrimmage. You and I were talking about this yesterday. I think there's a clear separation in college football at the moment. Georgia is at the top, and no one's even close to their level in terms of how they play and how dominant they are. And close behind is Texas, and Ohio State. I think there are 3 teams right now that everyone else is changing, and this will shift week to week. But right now it's Georgia, Texas, and Ohio State is the 3 best teams. But Texas, because of their playmaking ability, they can put points up on the board, but their physicality at the line of scrimmage, they're one of those teams that could give issues to a team like Georgia because they're strong where it counts, and that's up front on the offensive and defensive lines.
By the way, another fun stat, and I know these stats are going to be going away as we get into conference play, but in 2 weeks, former Pac-12, Chad, 21-2 this season. 21-2, former Pac-12, including Cal going to Auburn and getting a win, including Utah, once again, looking like Utah again. 21-2, former Pac-12 schools.
That's pretty good. What's frustrating for us is that, we watched the Pac-12 for years, and finally when they get to the level where they're going to earn some respect and showcase that they're one of the better conferences in college football, they disband and go their separate ways. But those teams have been impressive so far. And, heck, even for Washington State and Oregon State to come out after the frustrating offseason for them where they're left behind and they have a conference of 2, I think both of them have looked pretty darn good through the first 2 weeks. So nice to see the West Coast schools. And you know what's cool about the game? Like I was watching Arizona State and Mississippi State on Saturday, and it still felt like Pac-12 after dark. So even though we don't have it anymore, we're still getting some night games, which is nice. But very happy to see those teams, even some of the middle of the pack teams in the Pac-12 from last year, doing well and playing better football this season.
All right, the other big win, Notre Dame goes down, and we we fall into the Notre Dame trap every single year, Chad. I don't want to say we, but look, we work in media, and I try to tell people this because why do they always talk about the Lakers and the Cowboys? Because we live in a world of numbers, right? And
yes.
and numbers matter. And while Notre Dame has not been a significant national title contender for a long, long time, they still draw numbers. They still draw a ton of eyeballs and a lot of interest, and they always will. And this was a big one because they come off of a win against Texas A&M and looking like they're probably not going to be challenged until November when they play USC. And then, ho-hum, here comes Northern Illinois. Huge win for them. Huge upset in college football. And this is one where you and I differ on the playoff. That's fine. I'm over it. I'm past it. We're living in reality. So now that we do have a playoff, this was a huge playoff shakeup type game, Chad, because I don't know if this one loss completely eliminates Notre Dame, but they are now fully on tilt, as they say.
Yeah, 28-point favorite, losing at home to Northern Illinois. It was amazing. And the referees tried to give Notre Dame the game at the end. Northern Illinois got screwed on that 3rd down and short where they clearly picked up the 1st down, and then the Pope came out and spotted the ball, and it was 4th down, so they had to kick the field goal. Unfortunately, that youngster was able to knock it through the uprights. And but even the clock management there, Notre Dame, they didn't restart the clock, and Notre Dame didn't have to burn a timeout, so they had a timeout to use on that final drive, and they just couldn't get themselves in position. But I think you're right. I think Notre Dame now, they're probably going to have to win out to be able to put themselves in a strong playoff contention status. So I don't know if they're going to be capable of doing that, but it's really it's inexcusable to lose that game at home to Northern Illinois. And, they got the one against Texas A&M, which was a quality one against an SEC opponent. So we'll see how things play out. But, again, this is classic overreaction. The big takes after week 1 were USC and Notre Dame definitely in a position to make the playoff. I think what we have to do is let these games play out before we start making these bold judgments to see what these teams are really about. But I'm not going to lie. I watched a lot of games on Saturday, but nothing made me giddier than watching Notre Dame go down because their fans, they're arrogant. They believe they are the best thing in the history of college football. And I get caught up in some of the mystique sometimes, but that was a lot of fun to see them go down because no one saw that one coming. 28-point dog getting the outright win on the road. That was amazing.
It is going to be interesting. Chad Dewing from Rip City Drive joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. With a transfer, we're still in the infancy of the whole transfer portal thing, right? It's been around, but the fact that now players we're in year 3, year 4 of having the transfer portal be a way to kind of rebuild or revamp your roster. But I think we still kind of have that same mentality. I think Oregon's going through this, but there's a handful of other teams that I think are going to have to deal with this, Chad. When you start bringing in transfers in a college football world where, unlike in the NFL where you can bring in free agents, well, you got minicamp, right? You've got OTAs. You got an entire preseason. You have endless amounts of hours where you're limited in college football in practice time. You don't have any you have non-conference games, but you don't have any preseason games. And there are going to be some teams that are flying under the radar right now that are going to get better because the continuity starts to come throughout the season. And I know we love our preseason rankings, but it is going to be fascinating come November to see kind of who is in that mix, if Oregon can get back into that mix. But there's going to be a lot of teams that it just takes time with some of these transfers and in terms of getting that continuity and that team chemistry.
Yeah, especially, we were talking about the Ducks' offensive line. I think continuity among the offensive front is one of the most important things in football, and you do need time through practice and through play to be able to develop that continuity. And what's great now is the team I would use as an example would be Arizona State. They were awful last year with just 3 wins in Kenny Dillingham's first year. And one of the big issues was offensive line. They had massive injury. They lost a lot of players, so they used the portal during the offseason, and now they feature an offensive line with 5 seniors who are starting up front, and that's been the key to their turnaround with their wins over Wyoming and Mississippi State. And they've looked strong to start the year. That continuity that they have up front with experience, and I think one of the most difficult things in college football is that you don't get that preseason, you don't get the practice time, you start playing games, and you have to work through on the fly to develop some of that continuity. But you mentioned this last week, Justin. You made a great point, is that as college football fans, we're scarred from years and years of being in a situation where our teams have to win every game to be in a position to compete for a national championship. But that's not the case now with a 12-team playoff. And if you're a Ducks fan, it's frustrating to see them struggle through the first 2 weeks against lesser competition in Idaho and Boise State. But you have time to work on it. Mm-hmm. They'll get some guys back up front. They'll develop some of that continuity. And even if you suffer an early season loss, you're not out of it because you're in a position with your conference schedule and with the conference championship to put yourself back in a position to make the playoff. And you don't have to worry about being undefeated now. 1 or 2 losses, you can still get in, and I think that's what provides hope. And that's one of the coolest things about, the expanded playoff. I've always thought it's ridiculous that somehow you have to play a perfect season or go undefeated, and not only that, but you have to destroy all of your competition, or you're not a legitimate playoff contender. I've always thought that was ridiculous because the reality is that these are just kids, Justin, so they're going to have weeks where they don't look great. They're just kids, so they're going to struggle. They're going to have weeks where they don't look great or play up to their potential. But that's why I still put a value on winning a football game even when you're not at your best. So I think that's the change that we're going to adjust to, but with time we'll realize, like, hey, this is pretty sweet. You can still take a loss or not look your best and still be in a position to make the playoff and have a shot at a national championship. I love that.
One last thing before we let you go, Chad Doing, the co-host of Rip City Drive, joining us here on Rip City Mornings. You were up there in Seattle. You mentioned it. You saw the debut of Bo Nix. But you told me like 2 weeks ago, you're like, I got no expectations on this season. Don't worry. It's all about development. That's what you told me 2 weeks ago. And I said, we'll see when they start playing the games. And now here you are. You're already groaning in week 1. Yeah, it looked ugly, but Bo Nix looked like a rookie quarterback. He made some throws that hopefully he never tries to make ever again. And you said you had no expectations. You're already groaning week 1.
That's true. I don't have any expectations, and I'm okay with Bo's struggles. I expected him to look terrible yesterday in Seattle. First start in the NFL on the road against a defensive-minded coach in Mike McDonald. What I saw is what I expected. What I'm groaning about was the first half that featured 12 total first downs. The Broncos had multiple 3-and-outs. There were 2 safeties.
2 safeties. They were going for the record.
Yes. And a combined 3 turnovers. It was one of the worst first halves of football I've ever seen. And, I think the other problem, too, is that, and this is an important reminder for everyone, it does not matter how any player, especially rookies, look in the preseason. Preseason football is not regular season football, and the stuff they're seeing out there on the field comes nowhere close to what you're going to see when the regular season starts. So you cannot properly evaluate someone in the preseason. You should never do it. You got to wait until the games are real and guys are playing at full speed and you're getting all the exotic blitzes and different looks and the disguises from the defense. So, yes, the one thing I always look back on, Elway's first start, and, that's my measuring stick for Bronco quarterbacks. He was 1 of 8 with a pick and got benched. So even the great ones don't usually get off to a great start. So I think Bo's going to be fine. It got a little bit out of whack yesterday. He threw over 40 passes in the game. They didn't have the balance. They ran for less than 100 yards. So the issue for Denver is, like, You open up against McDonald and the Seahawks on the road. Now they're going to go back home next week, and they got to take on Mike Tomlin's defense.
The best defense in the NFL. Yep.
And they just effed up Atlanta yesterday with just reckless abandon. Their defense was nasty.
Awesome. TJ Watt
and then
so
after
awesome.
that, he's a stud. I still can't believe that he is the all-time leader in sacks for the Steelers. When you think about the players they've had and the fact that he leads the franchise all-time in sacks, it's amazing. And then after they play the Steelers, they got to go down to Tampa and take on Todd Bowles and that defense. So welcome to the NFL, Bo, and he's got to continue to grind. But yeah, the NFL is tough, man. And the throws in college that you make or get away with, when you hesitate or you wait too long or you stare down a receiver, the guys in the NFL are too good and they'll jump on it and pick it off. And Bo made a couple of decisions yesterday that were just uncharacteristic, but that's the way the NFL works. But Bo's got the right attitude. He's going to continue to grind, and with time I know he'll be better, and Sean Payton will get better, and it's just part of the process of a rookie quarterback, unfortunately.
Chad Dwight Jane's going to be on Rip City Drive this afternoon. What do we got? Who's coming on the big show?
I'm still working to come up with a guest list.
Got it.
I'm going to reach out to a couple of guys and be like, hey, my 320 fell through, but I'd love it if you'd come on the show. You're not my first option. Can you imagine doing that to a girl like Brenden? He's got his eyes set on, let's say Susie, and all of a sudden Susie falls through, and then option B falls through, so he rolls up on option C, who had interest to begin with, and he rolls back to her. He's like, I just want to ask you to the Sadie Hawkins dance, my friend. My first and second options fell through, but I'd love to take you now. Yeah, that's how he should approach it.
You're my
that's what he did with me
yesterday.
Chad,
I love you, buddy.
This is the first backup. You're the first backup. You're Dante Moore. He's waiting.
And of course, you're a friend of the show. You're a friend of the show.
Hey.
Yeah, Dante Moore. I'm the Dante Moore of Portland radio.
I'm sure people can say a lot worse about me and what I am. They called me the Kardashian of Portland radio.
Did you go to the game Saturday?
No, I was at a wedding. Watching it on my phone. Not fun. Not fun, Chad. But,
you got to get new friends, man.
There are things in life. There are things in life that you have to do when certain things pop up. Just like I got to let you go because my boss, Chad, is going to yell at me because I've murdered the clock, and we're getting out of here late. Hey, Rip City Drive this afternoon at 3.
Did you propose the idea to your wife about renewing your vows on a non-football weekend? Have you done that yet?
Yes, she is non-receptive. Not receptive at all.
That's great.
Hey, have a great rest of your day, bud. And people can hear you at 3 this afternoon with all the hot takes.
All right, you're a beautiful man. I'll talk to you later.
All right, there you go. Chad doing, boys and girls. We have got the RCM mailbag to wrap up the show next. 620 Rip City Radio. All right, big thanks to Chad Doing from RipCityDrive. Speaking of the drive, they're bringing their show to Haven Spa Pool and Hearth in Clackamas on Friday, September the 27th, of course, 3 to 6. Dwight and Chad will be broadcasting live, collecting new and gently used sports balls, only the gentlest of used sports balls, for the Boys and Girls Club of the Portland metro area. Get more details at the events page at ripcityradio.com. Right now, let's fire up the RCM mailbag and wrap up the Monday.
All right, firing up the big mailbag here on Monday. And again, big shout out to Chad Doing. Everything that he said was accurate, Justin. Like, the way it went down, how I texted him, like, hindsight, could have probably done it a little bit better. But, hey, I was in the middle of the river, man. So, come on, give me some love. But, no, super happy Chad joined us.
It is something that people don't understand as a producer. Now, I don't think I put a ton of pressure on you to book the show, but it's something that you take pride in, and in putting good guests on the show so that the people can have an enjoyable Monday morning. And when you think we're booked, and then situations happen, like somebody calls in sick, and it's like it's kind of a cluster, you know what?
Yes,
at that particular time, and you're like, and then. Yeah.
Throw in the fact that I had one bar of service. I'm just glad that text message sent, baby. And nevertheless, we are here opening up the mailbag. Another thing that happened to me yesterday that I asked Justin about, and I want to get the listening audience's thoughts too, in a general sense, as far as something that I thought was very interesting when I went through Wendy's last night, Justin, on my way home.
What'd you get, nuggets?
Yeah, I gotta go for it.
Go to Wendy's. You're not getting a Big Bacon Classic. Anyways,
it's tough. No, it's tough. It is a fair, but I ride for Wendy's, man. Those nuggets are solid. That being said, so place my mobile order just like Justin does with his Starbucks, and let's just say this gentleman in this large vehicle goes in the drive-thru in front of me, and I go, okay, probably gonna be a big order. I already have mine placed. I'm like, all right, just gonna have to be patient here for 5 minutes or so.
Any thought to go park and walk in?
I could have, but on the Wendy's does a thing where it's like, hey, if you're going to pick up, you have to choose drive-through or dine in.
Gotcha.
So I think that would have probably caused a hassle. You know me, Justin. I want to make life tough on fast food employees.
Got to play by the rules.
I know how that works. So anyway, guy orders, some solid food. Gets a couple Baconators.
Baconators are so good.
But it was what he ordered to drink, Justin, that quite surprised me. So I think it was like 3 combos. And he hooks himself up with 3 soda waters.
Mm-hmm.
Not water.
Not water.
But like, to describe it to all you at home, a flavorless LaCroix that's coming out of a soda machine.
It's just carbonated water.
Yeah. And my thought for you was, immediately I was taken aback. I was like, the heck? Like, this is not, fancy restaurant flat or sparkling, Justin.
Yeah.
So again, have you ever seen that? And would you kind of have your eyebrow perk up a little bit too if you could hear that being behind somebody?
Now, let me start by saying I drink sparkling water all the time. I drink soda water all the time. The reason I drink it all the time is because I used to be very addicted to diet soda, and it was getting to be a problem. So that was how I weaned myself off of diet soda.
How much you drink at your peak? Let's see if you're any worse than me.
If not a 2-liter a day, close to a 2-liter a day.
It's 1 or 2 cans a day for me.
Yeah, so think about how big a 2-liter. So I would go buy the 2 liters.
It's a lot of soda.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yes.
So I used soda water to wean myself off. That being said, if I'm getting a Baconator sandwich, your boy's getting at least a Diet Pepsi, if not full-on Dr. Pepper. Yeah, that's it's an interesting decision because
I just felt if you go to Wendy's, you might as well just go all out, right? Like you're skipping the healthy stuff. So
yeah.
But hey, and the other thing is like I'm down. I like sparkling water too, Justin. I just can't have it be flavorless. That's the part that it's like not blackberry, not tangerine, but just
like I ride for the lime, lime. But if there's nothing else, like the regular, it's fine. Again, not the best, but it'll work. The idea, though, of going all the way through Wendy's and getting. And by the way, respect to you for rolling the window down and peeping on that order because you knew you're like, I gotta listen to see how long this is gonna take.
Dude,
I do that all the time.
Dude, the homeboy got like 2 Baconators and like 20 nuggets in front of me, man. I'm like, okay.
And then order 3 sparkling waters. Like, dude, just get the Dr. Pepper,
I was
bro.
just curious. Each to their own. Appreciate, but
or at least a Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi or whatever it is. I think Wendy's Pepsi, but
yeah, for sure.
I don't know. It's been a minute, but yeah, it's an interesting choice, to say the least. All right, I'm so pumped. Football is back. We have got Monday Night Football tonight. We're going to do a full day NFL tomorrow. Pounce is going to join us. Thanks to super producer Brenden. Thanks to Chad Doing for joining us earlier, and thanks to all of you. Have a terrific Monday. We're back tomorrow morning, 6:20, Rip City Radio.